These 5 whys will pinpoint really where a rep is potentially struggling. They may see that as the gap itself. We know different. We know that there is going to be a root cause that we need to get to. So we're going to ask, why is this happening? And then keep going deeper until we get to that root cause. So an example of this may be, hey, we see a low conversion from stage 1 to stage 2. Why is that the case? The rep may be lacking confidence. Why is that the case? They are afraid to push back against this prospect. Well, why is that the case? Maybe they don't feel super confident in themselves pushing back. Well, why is that the case? Their preparation just was not up to snuff and they didn't have that going in. So ultimately what we're doing is creating this growth map to understand, hey, these root causes, we can actually treat the root cause, not the symptom.
And there's some science behind it. You can only ask somebody why 5 times before they lose the ability to continue to lie, because the lie gets so deep that they can't just keep going. But I'm interested, as you're doing the whys, you're not just saying, why is that the case 5 times in a row? Help me, like maybe we should do a quick role play. Make me your rep.
Pick an example.
5 why me, man.
So let's assume that for Mark, poor Mark.
Say I'm discounting too much.
Okay, Mark is discounting too much.
I'm maybe a discounter. No, I'm not.
So Mark, I feel like you're discounting and you're asking for approvals for discounts quite often. I'd be curious, why do you feel like that is, the tactic that you're using to get these deals across the line?
I think most enterprise buyers expect a discount. And when I show up and just do list price, the first thing they ask is, what is the discount? So I'm just kind of like trying to jump ahead of the ship.
Okay. Maybe tell me why you think that is their initial reaction when you get to a pricing conversation.
I'm not sure. I think, they think it's probably too expensive. I mean, I think that's how they come in, like there's going to be expensive and I'm going to drill you down.
Okay. Why do they feel that it's expensive relative to maybe the value that you've expressed to them?
Probably because I'm not creating enough value to justify the price. And so there's a price value mismatch.
Okay. So during that value conversation, why do you think it's getting to that point?
Maybe I'm not finding the right problem or articulating the solution in the right way that helps them understand like how much actual value there is there.
And what do you think the reason for that is?
I probably am not talking either to the right people or getting to the right pains.
Okay, so it sounds like we may be having some challenges identifying potential champions and understanding how they see value.
So let's just drop out of the role play for a second. Yeah. I'm gonna just tell you what just happened to me. That was a super cool experience for me as a person. Because what I had to do is every time I would get asked why, I had to dig. I had to actually come up with a reason. I had to think about what was going on. And while this was a role play and I was making it up, I was trying to actually think about certain situations I've been in. And I think what I enjoyed the most about it is I think I was starting to self-diagnose. You were helping me see, how do I get down to the root cause myself?
Yeah, I think it's challenging, right? And it's easy to say, oh, well, why? That can be people get on the defensive, right? You want to create that psychological safety where people can really go down that path together, right? You want to lean in and feel vulnerable. And I think, whether it be setting the expectation or sharing my own experience as a leader, gets reps to feel more comfortable going into that kind of experiment together. It really does. They need to lead themselves to water. You can't lead them yourself.
What did you hear about his why questions? Did you notice a pattern, or did you notice what he was doing as he was asking those?
It was very non-antagonistic.
No.
In the tone. It wasn't like, why are you doing that? It was like, why do you think the prospect feels that way? It was like you both trying to solve the problem together as opposed to, why do you do that?
Yeah.
Right? And I think that's one way you can make your rep feel less defensive around them, is it didn't feel like you were trying to figure out what Mark did wrong. You're trying to understand the intent behind why he did certain things. And I think the other thing that this exercise gives you the opportunity to do is there was a point where you had asked Mark, okay, why do you feel like they're asking for a discount in the first place? And Mark said, oh, it's because they don't see the value or it's too expensive. And you might be able to challenge the why at that point by saying, what if it was actually the prospect just wanted a good deal? And you can start to reframe how a rep is thinking. When you ask them these why questions, you understand what's going through Mark's head, and then you can dig into the root cause of why a rep made a certain decision. And then you can help them see prospect interactions in a different way. Yeah. And you don't do that if you just say, instead of discounting, do this instead.
Yep.
I think what was interesting to me was why questions by their nature are aggressive. Why is your conversion rate bad? Now I get set into a defensive mode. I think what you did awesome and demonstrated was, instead of making an aggressive why question, it was, well, why do you think that way? What you're asking me is like, Mark, what is your expert opinion on what you think was going on with them that made you do that? Which felt very not threatening. And so, the other thing you could do is 5 whys is the question, but really what it is digging deep. How and what questions are viewed as much less aggressive than why questions? How do you think you're doing it now, right? And so I think what you really demonstrated was you can ask why questions in a non-aggressive way that feels collaborative versus accusatory.
I think one of the biggest things that can be a challenge for people is we lie to others, but we also lie to ourselves, right? And so I'm not saying that you're lying to yourself in that, but what we are trying to investigate is there something that I have control over that I can change that will actually impact this outcome?